The data packet didn't beep. It screamed. Not with sound, but with the frantic energy pouring off the Xylosian scout ship hovering near the edge of human space. Inside the cramped observation pod, the air hummed with a low, worried vibration. The Xylosians weren't making it. Their smooth, gray skin pulsed with faint, anxious light, like deep-sea creatures reacting to danger. Their huge, dark eyes, designed to see the faintest starlight, were fixed on the swirling image of a single, blue and white planet hanging in the holographic display. Earth. For centuries, the Xylosians had watched quietly. They were the galaxy's quiet librarians, cataloging new life, waiting for the slow, steady climb towards star travel most species took. They expected Earth's humans to follow the pattern. Fire, wheels, steam, maybe rockets. Then, centuries later, the first wobbly steps into space. Peaceful curiosity, they hoped. Maybe even friendship. But Earth wasn't playing by the rules. It was like watching a toddler grab a live power cable and thrive on the shock. 1 minute, humans were lighting fires in caves. The next, they were splitting the very atom that held their world together. Then came the machines that could think. Not like the Xylosians' gentle, logical helpers, but sharp, hungry things built for speed and control. Worst of all, the humans kept fighting. Not just small skirmishes, but huge, planet-wide wars where cities turned to ash and millions vanished in flashes of light. They called it progress. The Xylosians called it terrifying. One young scout, her skin glowing a deep, troubled violet, pulled up a timeline. "Look," she whispered, her voice a soft chime. "Just over 100 years since they mastered basic electricity, and they already have weapons that could burn their own world. They call it deterrence. It feels like madness." She pointed to a specific moment. The moon, scarred by a test explosion, humans called peaceful. To the Xylosians, it was proof humans treated their own home like a toy to be broken. Their mission directive was clear: observe, learn, and only warn the Galactic Empire if a species showed true danger, the kind that could shatter the fragile peace holding 10,000 worlds together. This wasn't just danger. This felt like a wildfire catching in dry tinder, spreading faster than anyone thought possible. Humans didn't just have weapons. They seemed driven to make bigger ones. They didn't just have conflicts. They seemed to need them, building entire systems around the idea of winning, no matter the cost. The Xylosians called it unbounded ambition, a hunger that never stopped, a belief they could and should take whatever they wanted. The scout leader, his skin a steady, worried blue, made the call. His fingers danced over the smooth interface, not sending a routine update, but a full emergency alert. He poured everything into the packet. The timelines, the war footage, carefully anonymized to avoid panic. The psychological profiles, built from intercepted human broadcasts. Their news, their stories, their music full of both beauty and deep, restless anger. The message was blunt. Humanity is a Class Omega threat. Immediate quarantine or neutralization required. They do not understand limits. They will consume everything. The packet shot away. A desperate plea wrapped in light, aimed straight for the heart of the Galactic Empire. The scout ship fell silent. The only sound, the soft hum of the engines and the heavy weight of what they'd just done. They felt sick. Reporting a species for destruction went against everything they believed. But watching Earth, seeing the speed, the sheer force of human drive, it felt like the only way to save the galaxy from a storm they couldn't control. They'd done their duty. Now, they waited, hearts pounding with a fear they'd never known while watching lesser species. Weeks later, the packet arrived not with a bang, but with the quiet efficiency of imperial bureaucracy. High Commander Vex received it in his office, a vast room of cool marble and soft, glowing light high in the Empire's central spire. He was old, his scaled skin etched with the lines of 200 years of service, his eyes sharp and tired. He'd seen rebellions, plagues, even the slow death of stars. He expected routine reports, trade disputes, minor border squabbles, the usual background noise of a million worlds. He opened the Xylosian alert and froze. The hologram bloomed before him. Earth, vibrant and beautiful. Then the timeline started. Electricity mastered, 1880s. Nuclear fission achieved, 1940s. First crude AI concepts, 1950s. Global networked communication, late 1900s. First orbital colonies, early 2000s. Vex blinked. It was impossible. Blasphemous speed, the Great Silence War, a conflict that nearly tore the Empire apart, had taken 800 years to escalate from tribal spears to planet crackers. Humans did it in a century. Less. He scrolled deeper. Footage of human wars. Cities burning. Skies choked with smoke. Faces etched with a raw, animal fear he'd only seen in cornered predators. Not the disciplined clashes of imperial legions, but chaotic, brutal struggles where civilians were caught in the crossfire, where victory seemed to demand total destruction. He saw their leaders shouting, promising glory through force. He saw their art. Magnificent, yes, but often soaked in themes of conquest, of tearing down the old to build something new, no matter the cost. The Xylosian analysis hammered it home. This species possesses a unique psychological drive, the compulsion to expand, dominate, and innovate without regard for consequence or equilibrium. Their progress is indistinguishable from self-destruction on a species level. Vex felt a cold dread seep into his bones, something he hadn't felt since the Zenthar uprising. This wasn't just another noisy planet. This was a spark in a powder keg. He summoned the Xylosian ambassador immediately. The ambassador arrived, radiating quiet distress. In the cool, imposing chamber, he seemed small, fragile. He didn't sit. He stood, his large eyes holding Vex's gaze with an intensity that bypassed language. "Commander." His chime voice was low, urgent. "We did not send this lightly. We love life. We catalog it, we cherish it. But what we see on Sol 3, it is life turned against itself and against everything else. They are building tools of extinction while still learning to share food. Their history is a loop of violence they cannot break. Left unchecked, they will reach for the stars not with curiosity, but with weapons aimed outward. They will make enemies where none exist, simply because their nature demands conflict. This is not fear. This is observation. This is truth." Vex believed him. The data was undeniable. The speed, the violence, the sheer, terrifying hunger. It screamed Class Omega. The Empire's oldest, most dreaded classification. A species whose natural development posed an existential threat to galactic stability. The protocol was clear. Isolate, contain, or stop permanently. The thought made Vex's stomach turn. He'd spent his life preserving order, not extinguishing life. But the Xylosians were among the Empire's most trusted observers. If they were this scared, he called the emergency session of the High Council. As he walked the gleaming corridors towards the chamber, the weight of the decision pressed down on him. He thought of Earth's blue oceans, its green forests glimpsed in the data. Such beauty, such potential, but also such terrifying, unchecked fire. Could it be guided? Or was the fire itself the problem? He remembered the Xylosian phrase, They do not understand limits. And the galaxy, vast and ancient, ran on limits. Order. Predictability. What happened when a species with no brakes slammed into that order? The council chamber was a vast, circular room, bathed in soft, natural light. 10,000 years of imperial history hung in the air, thick as velvet. The council members, representatives of the oldest, most stable species in the galaxy, sat in their elevated seats, radiating calm superiority. They'd overseen peace for millennia. They saw the universe as a well-oiled machine, predictable and manageable. Vex presented the Xylosian data, his voice steady but heavy with the urgency he felt. Silence. Then, a low murmur. Not alarm. Counselor Thorn, a being of dense crystalline structure whose voice resonated like stones grinding, spoke first. His tone was patronizing, almost bored. Commander Vex, with respect, this is hysteria. He gestured dismissively at the hologram of Earth. Look at them. They are fracturing their own world with petty squabbles. No unified government. Barely off their cradle planet. Their fastest ship crawls at a fraction of light speed. They call splitting their moon progress? A ripple of quiet laughter went through the chamber. They are children, Commander. Loud, messy children playing with dangerous toys they don't understand. They will burn their fingers, learn a hard lesson, and eventually grow up, as all species do. Another counselor, a being of swirling gases, chimed in, her voice a soft sigh. The Xylosians are sensitive. Overly so. They see conflict where there is merely growing pains. Humanity's art also shows profound beauty, deep connection to their world. This ambition you fear? It is the spark of creation. It is how we built the empire. They will channel it. They must. Thorn leaned forward, his crystalline form catching the light. To act on this panic? To declare quarantine, or worse, on a pre-warp species based on fear of what they might become? It sets a dangerous precedent. It tells every young species we are watching, waiting to crush them for daring to dream big. It creates the enemy we fear. We are the Empire. We bring peace through stability, not preemptive strikes against toddlers. He looked around, his gaze commanding. We have seen 1 billion sparks. Most fizzle. A few light fires. But we do not tear down the forest because one sapling grows fast. We guide it. We observe. We do not fear the storm before the cloud forms. The vote was swift, almost casual, unanimous. Rejection. The Xylosian warning was dismissed as xenophobic alarmism. The directive was clear. Humanity was to be left alone. No quarantine. Xenophobic. No intervention. The Empire would watch, yes, but from a distance, under the benign shadow of imperial non-interference. The Xylosians were formally reprimanded for causing unnecessary concern and ordered to cease all special monitoring. Vex stood alone as the council dispersed, the cool chamber suddenly feeling like a tomb. He looked at the hologram of Earth, now just a pretty blue dot again in the council's eyes. He saw not beauty, but the terrifying speed of the spark. He heard not the Xylosians' desperate warning, but Thorn's arrogant laugh. They hadn't just dismissed the data. They dismissed the very idea that something new, something unpredictable, could threaten the perfect, ancient order they'd built. They were so sure of their place, so certain of the rules. They couldn't see the wildfire rushing towards them. The warning was real. The danger was real. And the galaxy's oldest, wisest rulers had just decided to take a nap while the fuse burned down. Vex closed his eyes. The image of Earth's burning cities flashing behind his lids. The silence in the chamber wasn't peaceful. It was the silence before the storm, and no one was listening. The gleaming council chamber felt colder than space after the vote. High Commander Vex didn't move as the other council members drifted away, their conversations already shifting to trade routes and festival schedules like they'd just settled a minor irrigation dispute. The hologram of Earth still hung in the air, a silent blue jewel spinning slowly. To Vex, it looked fragile. To them, it was just another speck in the map they'd mastered for 1,000,000 years. Counselor Thorn was the last to linger. His crystalline body caught the soft light, throwing sharp, proud shadows. "You see the danger, Commander," he rumbled, his voice like stones settling. "But you see only the danger. You miss the potential. This fire they carry? It's the same fire that built our empire. It's messy. It's loud. But it builds. We didn't get here by locking away every species that scraped its knee." He placed a heavy, multifaceted hand on Vex's shoulder. The gesture was meant to be reassuring, but it felt like a weight. Give them time. Give them space. They'll find their balance. Like all the others, fear makes us blind to the light in the spark. Vex just nodded. Arguing now was pointless. The decision was carved in stone. Or in this case, in the unshakable confidence of the oldest beings in the galaxy. He watched Thorn glide out, his form shimmering as he passed through the energy field of the doorway. The room felt emptier than ever. Just him and the spinning blue planet. Back in his office, the quiet hum of the spire usually soothed him. Today, it felt like the hum of complacency. He pulled up the Xylosian report again. Not the summary the council saw, but the raw data, the intercepted human broadcasts. He didn't need to understand their languages perfectly. The images spoke louder. He saw faces, real, living faces, twisted in anger, during fights over land or ideas. He saw others, young faces, staring up at the sky with a kind of desperate hope, pointing at the stars. He saw cities lit up at night, vibrant and teeming, but also saw the dark scars of places where families used to live, that just stopped existing after a flash of light. It wasn't abstract. It was people, millions of them, living, loving, fighting, dying, all happening crazy fast, like a film reel spun too quickly. He thought about the Xylosian scouts' words. They do not understand limits. It wasn't just about weapons. It was about everything. Humans seemed to believe they could take and take and take. From their land. From each other. From the very air they breathed. And it would never run out. They saw a problem and attacked it head-on, often making it worse, but never stopping, never slowing down. It was terrifying. But Vex, old soldier that he was, also recognized a kind of raw, terrifying courage in it. A refusal to accept no. A refusal to just be. It was the opposite of the Empire's smooth, predictable flow. Dangerous chaos. Weeks bled into months. The official Imperial stance was clear. Humanity was a developing species. Observe passively. Do not interfere. Trade routes near Sol System were quietly rerouted. Standard monitoring protocols were applied. Nothing special, nothing urgent. The Empire went back to its business. Peace. Order. The way things had always been. But Vex couldn't forget. He kept a private feed running, pulling in the faint, fragmented signals still leaking from Earth. News reports, music, strange arguments broadcast over the airwaves. He saw how the humans were changing, even as the Empire pretended not to notice. The constant fighting was changing. Not vanishing, but shifting. Instead of whole nations tearing at each other, new groups were forming. Not just countries, but huge companies. Corporations with more power than some small planets in the Empire. They didn't fight with armies on fields. They fought with money, with machines, with whispers that turned neighbors against each other. And they were looking outward, past their moon, past Mars. They were digging into asteroids, Not for science, but for the shiny rocks inside. The same rare metals the Empire used for its starships. They were building stations in space, not graceful habitats, but clunky, functional things that looked like they were held together with hope and welding sparks. They were hungry, and space, to them, looked like the last place left to be hungry in. One signal made Vex's blood run cold. It was a fragmentary news report. Shaky footage from a human ship near a rocky asteroid belt. They'd found something, not just rocks, but veins of pure, glittering ore. The human captain, his face sweaty and eyes blazing with a fierce, almost manic joy, yelled into the camera. "This is it. The key to our future. No more limits. We take what we need." The joy wasn't just about finding resources. It was the taking, the conquering. It echoed the Xylosian warning perfectly. No limits. Vex tried to sound the alarm again. Just a quiet note to the Council Security Office. "Look at this. See the drive? See the speed?" The reply was a standard bureaucratic form. Situation assessed. Within expected parameters for pre-warp development. Continue passive observation. Expected parameters. As if human history was just another chapter in a dusty manual. As if their frantic, breakneck sprint through destruction and creation was normal. He knew the Xylosians weren't giving up either. They were banned from official surveillance, but Vex heard whispers. They were still watching, hidden in the dark spaces between stars, sending desperate, coded messages not to the Empire, but to anyone who might listen. Smaller species, fringe traders, anyone with a ship and a conscience. Their messages were bleaker now. They spoke of human ships pushing further, faster, ignoring basic safety, ignoring the unspoken rules of space the Empire took for granted. They spoke of resource grabs turning violent, of human miners firing warning shots at survey drones from other species, drones that meant no harm, just mapped the rocks. The Xylosians called it the creeping edge of conflict. Vex called it the first sparks, catching the dry grass. He started seeing the humans differently. Not just as a threat, but as a force of nature. Like a hurricane or a volcano. You couldn't reason with it. You couldn't stop it by wishing it away. You could only hope to survive it. Or maybe, just maybe, learn to flow with its terrible energy before it burned everything down. The Empire saw a child playing with matches. Vex saw a wildfire already roaring through the forest, and the forest was the galaxy. One evening, staring again at the hologram of Earth, he noticed something new. The dark side, the night side, was brighter than it had been just a year ago. More lights, more cities burning the night away, more proof of their relentless push. He zoomed in. Not just lights, glints, sharp, metallic glints in orbit. More stations, more ships. Crude, yes. Slow, yes. But there, and multiplying. A deep, weary sadness settled over him, heavier than his scales. The Council was right about one thing. Humanity was building something. But it wasn't the peaceful, orderly future the Empire imagined. It was something raw. Something born of constant struggle. Something that saw the universe not as a garden to tend, but as a wilderness to be claimed. And the Empire, wrapped in its ancient robes of certainty, was sitting right in the path of the stampede, refusing to believe the thunder they heard was anything more than distant thunder. He thought of the Xylosian ambassador's trembling voice. They will make enemies where none exist. What if the humans reached out first? What if their first contact wasn't a handshake, but a demand? Or worse, a shot fired out of fear, because that's what they knew. The Empire expected newcomers to be like them. Cautious, rule-following, patient. Humans weren't. They were different. Wildly, dangerously different. And the galaxy's greatest power had decided the best strategy was to close its eyes and hope the wild thing calmed down on its own. Vex shut down the hologram. The blue light vanished, leaving only the soft glow of his desk lamp. Outside the window, the Imperial capital glittered, a testament to order and time. It felt suddenly fragile, like glass, and somewhere out in the dark, a spark was flying towards it, carried on the wings of a species that didn't know how to stop. The warning wasn't just ignored, it was laughed at. And the laughter, Vex knew with a sinking certainty, was the last sound before the glass shattered. He poured himself a drink, the liquid cold in his clawed hand. He wasn't drinking to celebrate. He was drinking for the peace that was already gone, long before the first human ship ever left its atmosphere. They'd been warned, loud and clear, and no one with the power to listen had bothered to hear. The storm wasn't coming. It was already here, hidden in the data streams and the frantic glow of a billion city lights on a small, blue world. The galaxy was asleep, and the wildfire was awake. The telescope was cold against the observer's forehead. Outside the small dome on the hill, the city lights glowed. But up here, away from the worst of the glare, the sky felt vast and strangely empty. For years, the observer had scanned those stars, not just for science, but with a quiet, stubborn hope. We can't be alone, they thought, adjusting the focus. Someone must be out there, watching too. The reports from the deep space listening posts were always the same: static, cosmic noise, the faint hum of distant galaxies. Nothing that sounded like voices. It was frustrating. It made some people give up, convinced the universe was just rocks and radiation. But the observer kept looking. Hope was hard to kill. Then, one rainy Tuesday, it happened. Not a clear signal, not words, but a pattern, buried deep in the static, repeating every 7.3 minutes like a heartbeat. It wasn't natural. Stars didn't pulse like that. Asteroids didn't hum that frequency. The observer's hands shook as they replayed the recording, filtering out the noise. There it was again, a deliberate rhythm, a mathematical whisper in the dark. Someone's trying to talk. The room, usually just a workspace, suddenly felt charged, important. They called the team in, the small group of engineers and scientists who also believed. Coffee mugs were forgotten, eyes glued to screens. They worked through the night, hearts pounding with a mix of terror and wonder. This is it. First contact. They traced the signal's origin. Not from some distant star, but from the edge of the solar system, near the asteroid belt, where humans were just starting to mine, closer than anyone dreamed. It felt intentional, like someone was waiting, watching them. The observer felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold telescope. This wasn't just proof. It was an invitation, or a warning. They had to answer. Back on Earth, the news spread fast, but quietly. Not through headlines, but through secure channels. The Global Council, the uneasy alliance of nations and corporations that now ran the planet, was stunned. Decades of searching. And it happened now, while they were still scrambling to build ships that could reach Mars properly. The mood wasn't joy. It was deep, gut-level anxiety. Why now? What do they want? Are they friendly? Old fears, the kind born from centuries of human conflict, flared up instantly. Some leaders saw opportunity, trade, technology, a chance to finally stop fighting each other. Others saw only danger. They found us. What if they want what we have? What if they see us as weak? The observers team worked frantically. They couldn't understand the alien language, of course, but math was supposed to be universal. They crafted a simple reply. Prime numbers, the chemical signature of water, a basic image of the solar system with Earth highlighted, a digital hello, built from the bones of science. It felt clumsy, like shouting, "Friend," in a language you barely knew, but it was all they had. They beamed it out towards the source of the signal. A focused pulse of hope shot into the void. Then came the waiting. Every minute felt like an hour. They checked the receivers constantly, jumping at every blip on the screen. Please answer. Please let this be real. But the silence that followed wasn't the peaceful quiet of space. It was a heavy, suffocating silence. Days passed, then weeks. The repeating signal from the edge of the belt stopped. Just gone. Vanished. Like it had never been there. The observer stared at the now empty frequency display. The hope they'd carried for years draining away, replaced by a cold dread. Did we scare them off? Did they think we were hostile? The worst thought crept in. Maybe it was never for us. Maybe it was just noise. We imagined it. Down on Earth, the silence was interpreted very differently. The Global Council watched the failed contact with growing unease. The initial spark of hope flickered and died, smothered by old habits. See? Some argued. They heard us, and they ran. Or they ignored us. That means they're strong. And strong things don't talk to weak things, unless they want something. The memory of human history, the wars, the betrayals, the constant struggle for resources, colored everything. In their world, silence from a potential rival wasn't peaceful. It was the calm before the storm. It meant the other side was planning, gathering strength, waiting to strike. Unbeknownst to the humans, the silence wasn't indifference. It was the Empire's jamming. High Commander Vex, bound by the Council's order to leave humanity alone, had authorized a subtle, wideband frequency dampener near the solar system. It wasn't meant to be malicious. Just a gentle nudge to keep the noisy children from accidentally stumbling into serious galactic traffic or causing a panic by thinking they'd made contact with something dangerous. Let them think the stars are empty a little longer. The logic went. It's safer. For everyone. Less chance of them doing something reckless, out of fear or excitement. To the Empire, it was like putting a fence around a construction site. To the humans, it felt like cosmic abandonment. The jamming didn't just block the Xylosian signal. It drowned out everything faint and artificial in that part of the sky. When the humans sent their hopeful, hello, it didn't vanish into the void. It hit an invisible wall, absorbed and silenced by the Empire's well-intentioned shield. They never knew their message was blocked. They only knew the stars stayed stubbornly, terrifyingly quiet after their attempt. It confirmed their deepest, darkest suspicion. The universe is hostile. If there are others out there, they don't want to talk. They're hiding. Or waiting. This silence became the fuel for something dangerous. The Global Council, already nervous about resource shortages and territorial squabbles in the asteroid belt, saw the silence as proof. We're alone. Truly alone. No one's coming to help. No one's watching to keep us honest. The fragile cooperation that had formed around space exploration started to crack. Old rivalries flared. Corporations with mining outposts began talking about protecting their claims. New, heavily armored survey ships were quietly approved. Ships designed less for science and more for deterrence. The message was clear. If the universe is silent, it's because it's full of threats. We have to be ready to fight for everything. The observer, back at the telescope, felt the shift. The hopeful late-night sessions with the team dwindled. Funding for pure Listening. Projects dried up. Money flowed instead to projects with sharper edges, better sensors for spotting potential threats, stronger hulls for ships, defensive systems that looked suspiciously like weapons. One evening, packing up after another fruitless scan, they overheard two engineers talking near the coffee machine. Pointless, one muttered, gesturing at the sky. Nothing's out there but rocks and radiation. We're on our own. Always have been. Time we stopped pretending otherwise and got serious about protecting what's ours. The observer didn't argue. The cold silence of the stars, amplified by the Empire's invisible shield, had convinced even the hopeful that the universe was a lonely, dangerous place. It was a tragic misunderstanding, built on layers of fear and arrogance. The Empire, convinced of its own wisdom and stability, thought it was protecting the galaxy by keeping humanity in the dark, believing the humans would naturally calm down. They didn't understand that for humans, darkness and silence didn't mean peace. It meant danger lurking just out of sight. The humans, reaching out with hope and finding only a wall of static, interpreted the silence not as protection, but as proof of a hostile universe. Their instinct, forged in millennia of survival on a tough planet, wasn't to wait patiently. It was to prepare for the fight they were sure was coming. The Xylosians' warning about making enemies where none exist wasn't just possible. It was actively happening. Right now, because the galaxy's oldest power had decided the best way to handle a scared, loud child was to put a pillow over its head and hope it went to sleep. Instead, they just made the child feel more alone, more scared, and far more likely to lash out the first time it thought it saw a shadow move. The observer looked up one last time that night. The stars were bright, beautiful, and utterly silent. And in that silence, humanity was building walls, not bridges. The warning had been ignored, and the consequence was already taking root. The humans were becoming exactly what the aliens had feared. Not because they were evil, but because they were convinced, by the very silence meant to protect them, that they had no other choice. The galaxy wasn't empty. It was ignoring them. And that, for a species that had always defined itself by overcoming obstacles, felt like the greatest threat of all. The air inside the mining ship Deep Core Driller tasted stale recycled too many times, thick with the smell of sweat and burnt coffee. Outside the scratched viewport, the asteroid belt glittered under distant sunlight, rocks tumbling like forgotten toys. Inside, the crew moved with tired efficiency. They'd been out here for months, scraping rare metals from cold stone, far from Earth's noise. Everyone was on edge. Rumors had spread fast. Other mining crews claimed they'd seen strange lights near Jupiter's moons, silent ships that vanished when approached. Probably just glitches, the captain had said, but his knuckles were white on the controls. Everyone knew the truth. We're not alone out here. And the silence from the stars felt less like peace, more like a held breath. Then the alert blared a shrill, urgent tone nobody had heard in training. On the main screen, a shape resolved out of the starfield. Not a rock. Not human. Sleek, silver, moving with impossible smoothness. It glided into view like a shark cutting through water, silent and deliberate. The crew froze. This was it. First contact. But the training manuals they'd skimmed, stay calm. Signal peace. Wait for instructions, felt useless now. The ship hung there, close enough to see its surface, ripple like liquid metal. No flashing lights. No hails. Just watching. Comms open? The captain asked, voice tight. Trying. Nothing. They're not responding to standard hails. Scan for weapons? Can't tell. They're tech. It's like nothing we've seen. Panic, cold and sharp, started threading through the cabin. The crew's hands hovered over controls. Years of human history screamed in their heads. When something unknown shows up, it's a threat. Always has been. They remembered old wars. The way enemies always came without warning. They thought of the empty stars, the silence that told them the universe was hostile. This is why it's silent, one engineer thought, heart-hammering. Because the strong don't talk. They take. Then the alien ship moved. Not aggressively, a gentle turn, maybe to get a better look. But to the crew, it looked like positioning for an attack. The captain's mouth went dry. Protocol said, wait. But what if waiting got them killed? What if this thing fired first? Like every enemy in every war humanity had ever fought. The memory of Earth's conflicts, cities burning, families gone in a flash, flashed in his mind. Don't die waiting. Defensive posture, he snapped, the words tasting like ash. Activate point defense lasers. Target their engine's non-lethal warning shot. The engineer at weapons hesitated. Sir, we don't know if they're hostile. Now, the laser fired a searing blue streak across the void. It struck the alien ship's flank. Not to destroy, but to say, back off. What happened next shattered everything. The alien ship didn't flinch, didn't return fire. Instead, it pulsed with soft light. A gesture, maybe. A greeting? A warning? But the driller's sensors screamed. Energy spike. The crew saw it as a weapon charging. Pure instinct took over. The engineer at weapons, thinking they were about to be vaporized, slammed his hand on the kinetic launcher, a last-ditch defense meant to punch holes in asteroids. A tungsten slug, the size of a car, shot out at hypersonic speed. It hit the alien ship dead center. Metal screamed. The alien vessel didn't explode, it unraveled. Sections folded inward like crumpled paper, light bleeding out in silent, beautiful waves. Then, darkness. Just debris spinning slowly in the black. Silence. Thick, choking silence. The crew stared. Numb. The engineer who fired vomited into his helmet. The captain's hands shook so badly, he couldn't unclench them. They hadn't meant to kill. Just to scare. Just like always. But this wasn't Earth. This wasn't a border dispute. They'd just murdered something from the stars. On the Imperial patrol ship Silent Guardian, the impact registered as a system failure. No alarm. No enemy detected. Just cessation. Commander Vex felt it in his bones, a sudden, cold absence where a ship should be. He stood on the bridge, scales tight with dread, staring at the void where the Sentinel had been. The Xylosian's warning echoed. They do not understand limits. Then, the human signal came through a garbled, frantic voice crackling over emergency channels. Unidentified vessel. You fired first. We acted in self-defense. Repeat. Self-defense. Do not approach. Vex's blood ran cold. They think we attacked them. The patrol ship hadn't fired a single shot. It had been scanning, observing standard procedure. But to humans, the unknown was the attack. Their entire history taught them that. He ordered a slow approach, lights flashing peace symbols, comms open on all frequencies. We mean no harm. We are here to help. The humans saw it differently. The alien ship was coming closer. After they'd defended themselves. They're retaliating. On the driller, the captain made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. They won't stop, he whispered. We hit them once. They'll hit us harder. He turned to his crew, eyes hollow. We tell Earth everything. And we run. He sent the distress call not to the aliens, but home. Attacked by hostile aliens. Lost Sentinel. They're coming for us. All mining crews arm up. This is war. The message blasted toward Earth, raw and terrified. It didn't mention the laser. Didn't mention the kinetic slug. It spoke only of sudden violence from the stars. On Earth, the Global Council heard it and didn't hesitate. Decades of preparing for a hostile universe snapped into action. Ships that had been labeled survey vessels powered up hidden weapons. Orbital defense platforms, built just in case, locked onto coordinates near Jupiter. The fragile peace between human factions evaporated. They attacked first. That was all anyone needed to know. When the Imperial punitive fleet arrived days later, ships gleaming, moving with slow, deliberate calm, they found not a cowering planet, but a hornet's nest. Human vessels, crude but numerous, swarmed from hidden asteroid bases. They didn't wait for communication. They fired. The Battle of Sol Gateway wasn't a war. It was a collision of two worlds who spoke entirely different languages of fear. The Imperial ships moved with precision, elegant, predictable patterns, honed over millennia. Human ships darted like angry wasps, breaking every rule of engagement. They rammed. They used debris as weapons. They sacrificed ships to blind sensors. They fought not for territory, but for survival because in their bones, they knew the universe wanted them dead. An Imperial commander watched in horror as a human frigate, critically damaged, accelerated straight into his cruiser's shield array. Not to destroy it, to disable it with sheer momentum. Why would they throw lives away like that? He asked his tactical officer. The officer's voice was grim. Because they don't see it as throwing away. To them, dying for the group is normal. No, normal. The humans didn't understand the Empire's restraint. Why weren't they using their big weapons? Why were they trying to disable, not destroy? To humans, it looked like mockery playing with them before the kill. So they fought harder, dirtier. A young human pilot, barely out of training, saw an Imperial ship powering up what looked like a main cannon. They're going to glass Mars. No time to think. She jettisoned her cargo hold full of volatile mining explosives and flew it straight into the alien vessel's engine array. The explosion lit up the belt like a second sun. On the Silent Guardian, Vex watched the feed. Not with anger. With despair. The Xylosians had said humans would burn the garden to keep warm. He finally understood. To humans, the galaxy was a garden, and they'd burn it all down if they thought it kept them safe. The battle ended not with surrender, but exhaustion. Human ships limped back to Earth, dragging broken hulls. Imperial vessels retreated, shields flickering, carrying the bodies of the first aliens ever killed by a pre-warp species. The driller's captain sat alone in his cabin, staring at a photo of his daughter. He'd saved his crew, but he'd doomed everyone else. The silence of space now felt like judgment. High Commander Vex stood on his bridge, the void stretching before him. The Empire had come expecting to punish a noisy child. Instead, they'd stumbled into a wildfire. And the worst part? The humans hadn't lied. From their side, they were the victims. They'd seen an alien ship move, felt threatened, and reacted the only way their history taught them, with overwhelming force. The galaxy had been warned. Humans were dangerous not because they were evil, but because they were human. They saw threats in shadows. They fought first, asked never. And the Empire, wrapped in its ancient certainty, had handed them the matches. As the Imperial fleet turned for home, Vex sent a single message back to the Council, not a report, but a plea. We were wrong. They don't play by our rules. They don't see the universe as we do. They see only danger. And now, they know we're here. Quarantine won't work. Talking won't work. They will come for us. Because to them, survival means striking first. Always. He closed the channel. The stars outside looked different now. Not peaceful. Not empty. Full of a terrifying truth. Humanity wasn't just in the galaxy. It was changing it. And the age of quiet stars was over. The silence humans had feared It was gone forever, replaced by the sound of a species that finally knew it wasn't alone and was ready to fight for its place among the stars, no matter the cost. The dust never really settled after Soul Gateway. Not the kind you could sweep up, anyway. It was the other dust, the kind that got inside your bones, the kind that made every quiet moment feel heavy. Back on Earth, in a cramped apartment overlooking a city that used to buzz with late-night energy, someone sat staring at a cracked tablet screen. The news feeds were all the same. Grainy footage of burning ships near Jupiter, shaky interviews with survivors talking about alien aggression, leaders shouting about protecting humanity. But the person on the tablet wasn't seeing any of that. They were replaying the deep core driller's final transmission, the one the captain sent before vanishing into the asteroid belt. The one that started everything. They attacked first, he'd yelled, voice raw with terror. But the tablet showed the raw sensor logs too, the laser firing first, the kinetic slug streaking out into the dark. The truth, buried under layers of panic and propaganda. They zoomed in on a frame. The alien ship's soft pulse of light, gentle as a heartbeat, right before the human weapons fired. It wasn't a threat. It was a hello. And Earth had answered with a hammer. The realization hit like a gut punch. We did this. All of this. The silence they'd feared from the stars, they'd shattered it themselves. And now, the galaxy wasn't silent anymore. High Commander Vex stood alone in the observation dome of the Silent Guardian, far from the battle scars. Below him, the Imperial fleet hung in the void like wounded birds, some still trailing smoke from jury-rigged repairs. The stars looked the same, cold, distant, indifferent, but Vex saw them differently now. He remembered the council chamber, the bored laughter, Counselor Thorne's words, "They're just noisy children." He'd carried that arrogance home like a stone in his gut. But Soul Gateway hadn't been a child's tantrum. It had been something else entirely. Something the Empire's ancient rulebooks didn't have a word for. Humans didn't fight like disciplined soldiers. They fought like cornered animals, wild, desperate, willing to tear their own world apart to survive. They'd rammed ships, sacrificed crews, turned mining explosives into weapons. Not for glory, not for territory, just to live. The Empire had spent millennia building a universe where conflict had rules, where enemies surrendered, where wars ended with treaties. Humans didn't know those rules, or worse, they rejected them. To them, war wasn't a tool, it was the air they breathed, and the Empire had walked right into it, blindfolded by its own certainty. Vex touched the cool glass of the dome. The galaxy felt fragile now, like thin ice over dark water. One wrong step, and everything could shatter. On Earth, the cost was everywhere. Not just in the broken ships or the empty chairs at dinner tables, but in the way people moved. Faster, tenser, like they were always bracing for the next blow. In a makeshift medical bay, a young engineer with a bandaged arm watched a nurse clean a wound on a pilot's leg. The pilot winced, but didn't flinch. "Heard they're calling it the first contact war back home," the pilot muttered, forcing a smile. "Makes it sound almost noble." The engineer shook his head. It wasn't war. It was a mistake. A stupid, scared mistake. The nurse paused, her hands stained with antiseptic. "Does it matter what we call it? People are dead. They're dead." She didn't say aliens. She didn't need to. Everyone knew. The silence they'd spent decades fearing, the silence that told them the universe was empty and hostile, had finally been broken, and the sound it made was gunfire. The engineer thought of the telescope back home, the one he used to scan the stars for hope. Now, all he saw when he closed his eyes was that alien ship unraveling in the dark. We were so sure we were the victims, he thought. But what if we were the monsters all along? The Imperial Council called it a localized incident. Just a border skirmish. Nothing to panic over. They rerouted trade lanes, sent diplomats to soothe ruffled feathers among allied species, and quietly upgraded border patrols. Business as usual. But Vex saw the cracks. In the war room, holographic maps of the galaxy flickered once. Calm blue sectors now stained red with human incursions. Asteroid outposts reported human ships, ignoring Imperial buoys, mining claims overlapping with protected zones, tense standoffs where human captains glared through viewports like wolves guarding a kill. The Empire's peacekeepers moved in slow, predictable patterns. Humans darted in like sparks from a fire, unpredictable, aggressive, always testing the edges. One report showed a human survey ship deliberately flying through an Imperial ceremonial fleet, scattering the formation like leaves. "They're not exploring," a junior officer said, voice tight. "They're proving they can." Vex knew why. To humans, the galaxy wasn't a garden to tend. It was a jungle. And the only way to survive was to show your teeth first. The Council still called them reckless, unstable. Vex called them terrified. Terrified of the silence. Terrified of being alone. So they filled the void with noise engines, roaring, weapons primed, flags planted on rocks that weren't theirs. Every move screamed the same thing. We're here, and we won't go quietly. Then came the human broadcast. Not a threat, not a demand, just a voice, calm and tired, cutting through the static on every Imperial channel. "This is Earth," it said. No grand titles, no posturing, just Earth. "We know you're listening. We know what happened at Sol Gateway. We were wrong. We fired first. We were scared. We thought you were attacking. But we see the sensor logs now. We see your ship reaching out." A pause, long enough for Vex to hold his breath. "We don't want war, but we won't hide in the dark anymore. If you want peace, talk to us. Not over our heads. Not through silence. Talk." The transmission ended. No fanfare. Just truth, raw and bleeding. The council chamber erupted. "Propaganda!" Thorn boomed, his crystalline form flashing with anger. "They admit guilt to lull us into complacency. They'll stab us while we shake hands." Others agreed. Humans couldn't be trusted. Their history proved it. Vex stayed silent. He thought of the Xylosians' warning. They will make enemies where none exist. But what if the opposite was true? What if humans needed enemies to feel safe? What if the only way they knew how to find peace was by first proving they could win a war? It was the bravest thing he'd ever heard. Admitting fear took more courage than firing a weapon. That night, Vex walked the silent corridors of the flagship. He passed engineers, repairing blast scorch marks. Their movements slow with exhaustion. He saw faces not just Imperial, but from a dozen allied species, all carrying the same weight. The war hadn't just cost ships. It had cost trust. The galaxy felt smaller now, more dangerous, but also more real. He stopped at a viewport. Out there, beyond the stars, a small blue world was waking up, not to conquest, not to fear, but to the terrifying, beautiful truth. We're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step towards something new. Back on Earth, the person with the cracked tablet finally turned it off. Outside their window, the city lights glowed not with the frantic energy of before, but with a quieter, steadier hum. People were still scared, still angry, but something had shifted. The broadcast had been heard, not just by the Empire, but by everyone. We were wrong. 2 words that changed everything. They stood up, walked to the window, and looked up. The stars were still there. Cold, distant, but no longer silent. Somewhere out there, an answer was coming. not a weapon, not a threat, but a voice. And for the first time in human history, they weren't shouting into the void. They were listening. The galaxy had been warned about humans. No one listened. Could two species, one built on order, the other on chaos, find a language deeper than fear? Could they learn that peace wasn't the absence of noise, but the courage to speak through it? The stars didn't have answers. Only time. And time, Vex realized, staring at Earth's pale glow on the view screen, was the one thing neither side had ever learned to trust. But maybe, just maybe, they could start. One honest word at a time. The age of silence was dead. The age of listening had begun. And in that fragile, terrifying space between heartbeats, hope flickered small, but unbreakable.